The ground under my transport shook so hard that my teeth clicked together, and for a moment I thought the whole ridge was about to swallow me whole. I am Nora Bellamy, and 3 hours ago I was flying a routine supply run across Threnodi's Reach, a frontier moon my people shared with a species we barely understood. I never expected to be standing on a crumbling ledge with my heart slamming against my ribs, staring down into a ravine that had just opened up like a wound in the earth. A sound rose up from below. It was not the roar I expected from something so large. It was smaller than that, cracked and desperate, the kind of sound a creature makes when it believes no one is coming. I should have turned my transport around the second my scanners flagged the airspace as Vraxel territory. Everyone on this moon knew the rules. The Vraxel were an ancient species who took the form of massive dragons, proud and private, and they did not like humans anywhere near their land. We had a treaty, thin as paper, that kept the peace only because both sides avoided each other completely. Crossing that line was the kind of mistake that ended careers, or worse. But the sound kept calling, and I could not make myself fly away. I climbed down through loose rock, my boots sliding on broken stone, my breath coming fast and shallow. The rock slide had carved a jagged scar down the side of the ridge, and at the bottom of it, wedged between two massive boulders, was a creature I had only ever seen in official warning briefings. A young dragon, still small enough that its limbs looked too big for its body, was pinned beneath a slab of stone. One of its wings was folded at an angle that made my stomach turn. It was not broken in the way a branch breaks. It was crushed. Its eyes found mine. They were a deep amber, wide with a fear that needed no translation. I had grown up on stories about the Vraxel that painted them as untouchable, dangerous, distant. Nothing in those stories prepared me for the way that small creature looked at me like I might either save it or end it. I did not think. I moved. I wedged my pry bar under the edge of the boulder and threw my whole weight against it. It barely shifted. Somewhere above me, a low growl rolled across the ridge, deep enough that I felt it in my chest before I heard it. Something large was circling. I did not look up to check what it was. I already knew that whatever it was, it had smelled the blood in the air, and decided this ravine was a hunting ground. I pried at the rock again, and again, until my palms burned and my arms shook. The cub let out another cry, weaker this time, and that sound gave me strength I did not know I had left. On the fourth try, the boulder groaned and rolled aside just enough. I grabbed the cub under its good wing and pulled. It was heavier than anything I had ever tried to move, easily 400 pounds of scale and muscle. But fear does strange things to a body. I dragged it clear of the rocks as the growling above grew louder, closer, hungrier. I looked up just once and saw a shape with too many limbs picking its way down the ridge toward us, drawn by the scent of an injured animal that could not defend itself. I had a signal flare in my pack, the kind meant for emergencies, and I fired it straight at the creature's path. The flash and the noise sent it scrambling back up the rocks, snarling in frustration, buying me maybe a minute, maybe less. A minute was enough. I wrapped the cub's crushed wing in cargo webbing, tight enough to hold it steady, and used a support strut from my repair kit as a splint. The cub trembled under my hands the entire time, but it did not fight me. It watched my face instead, like it was trying to decide whether I was another threat or something else entirely. I do not know how I got it up that ravine. I remember my legs burning, my lungs on fire, the cub's weight nearly folding me in half as I hauled it toward my transport one exhausting step at a time. I remember the creature above us circling back, testing the edge of the flare's dying light, and I remember screaming at it, actually screaming, until it lost its nerve and vanished into the rocks. By the time I reached my transport, my arms had gone numb and my shirt was soaked through with sweat. I loaded the cub into the passenger hold, strapped it down as gently as I could manage, and sat in the pilot's seat for one long breath before I lifted off. Only then did the full weight of what I had just done settle over me. I had crossed into Vraxel territory. I had interfered with a creature that, according to everything I had been told, was never meant to be saved. Vraxel culture treated flight as sacred, a proof of worth passed down through their bloodlines. A cub born or injured with a wing that would never fly properly was called sky unworthy, and clan law said you let nature decide its fate. You did not interfere with what they called the verdict of the sky. I had just spent the last 20 minutes doing exactly that. I flew back to Outpost Corvus with a baby dragon bleeding quietly in my passenger seat and a knot of dread tightening in my stomach with every passing mile. I kept waiting for Vraxel wings to fill my rearview scanner, for fire to bloom across the sky behind me, for some ancient law to catch up with me before I made it home. Nothing came, just empty sky and the ragged sound of the cub's breathing. The outpost medic, a calm and steady man named Owen Prescott, took one look at what I carried into his bay and nearly dropped his tray of instruments. "That is a Vraxel cub," he said, his voice tight. "Nora, do you understand what you have just brought into this base?" "I understand," I said, and my voice cracked more than I wanted it to. I could not leave it there. Owen did not argue with me again. He worked through the night, setting the wing as best human medicine could manage, cleaning wounds that would have killed a smaller creature outright. I stayed by the cub's side the entire time, talking to it in a low voice even though I had no idea if it understood a single word. It kept its amber eyes fixed on me, and somewhere around the third hour, exhaustion finally pulled it into sleep. I did not sleep at all. I sat there running through every possible outcome of what I had done, and none of them ended well for me. For 2 days, nothing happened. The cub grew stronger under Owen's care, eating with a hesitant hunger that told me it had not been fed properly in some time. I started calling it Ash, mostly because I needed something to call it besides the cub, and the name seemed to fit the gray undertones in its scales. Ash did not respond to the name at first. By the second day, its ears would twitch every time I said it. I kept expecting punishment to arrive on wings. Instead, on the third day, my scanners lit up with a formation of large shapes crossing the perimeter of Corvus, moving with a slow, deliberate grace that felt more like ceremony than attack. 5 Vraxel landed just outside the outpost gates. They did not draw close in the way I imagined an attacking force would. Their wings were folded flat against their bodies, a posture I would later learn was reserved for formal address, not conflict. At the center of the group stood an elder, its scales gone a pale silver with age, nearly twice the size of the others around it. My commanding officer wanted to seal the gates and call for backup. I told him that would only make things worse, and something in my gut told me I needed to be the one to walk out there. He let me go, though I could see the fear behind his eyes as I crossed the open ground toward 5 dragons who could have ended the entire outpost without much effort. The elder lowered its massive head until one eye, slitted and gold, was level with mine. "You took the cub from the verdict of the sky," it said. Its voice was low and rough, but the words in my language were clear enough to understand every syllable. "I did," I answered, and I did not let my voice shake. "I found him trapped and injured. I could not leave a living creature to die like that. You knew our law." "I knew it," I said. "I broke it anyway. If you are here to take him back, or to punish me for what I did, I understand. I would still do it again." The silence that followed felt endless. 5 massive creatures stared down at one small, exhausted human standing her ground on an open field, and for a long moment, I genuinely believed I had just signed away my life. Then the elder spoke again, and its tone had shifted into something I did not expect. It sounded almost stunned. "No Vraxel outside her own bloodline has done what you have done in 400 cycles," it said. "No outsider has ever done it at all." I did not understand what that meant, not yet, the elder explained, slowly, choosing its words with care. Among the Vraxel, saving a life from the verdict of the sky was never treated as a simple act of mercy. It was the foundation of something ancient and unbreakable, a bond called Drethkin, a debt so sacred that entire clans had gone to war over cubs claimed and saved by rival broods. That bond had never once crossed between species. There was no precedent in their history for a human triggering something meant only for their own kind. The clan had spent 2 full days arguing among themselves, not about whether to punish me, but about what law even applied to what I had done. In the end, the elder told me, the bond did not care about precedent or bloodlines. A life was a life, and a debt formed the moment that life was saved. What came next changed everything, not just for me, but for every human standing on that outpost that day. Ash, the elder explained, was bonded to me for life now, in a way that meant something far deeper than ownership or gratitude. In Vraxel terms, he was kin, tied to me the same way a hatchling would be tied to the one who carried it from danger. The elder made it clear that this was not a gift I could refuse, and honestly, looking at Ash's amber eyes watching me from the medical bay window, I did not want to refuse it anyway. The clan did not stop there. Over the following weeks, they opened parts of their history and knowledge that no human had ever been permitted near. Records of atmospheric engineering that could make barren stretches of the moon livable, medical techniques drawn from centuries of treating injuries far worse than what Ash had suffered, knowledge they had guarded fiercely from a species they had never fully trusted, now offered freely, because of one choice made in a collapsing ravine. They also placed their protection over Corvus itself. Word spread through every Vraxel clan on Threnity's Reach that the humans of that outpost lived under Drethkin protection, the same protection a clan extended to its own hatching grounds. I did not understand the full weight of that until 8 months later, when a mining company from outside our territory tried to push its way onto land the Vraxel considered sacred. They expected to find human security waiting to negotiate or resist. Instead, they found 6 adult dragons standing between them and the land they wanted to strip. The mining company left within a day and never returned. I would love to say that everything after that moment was calm, but the truth is more complicated and more interesting than that. Ash grew fast, faster than I expected, and every stage of his growth came with its own set of challenges. His wing healed but not straight. A jagged scar traced the joint where the bone had knitted slowly and stubbornly, and for the first several months, the other cubs in his birth clan avoided him, still carrying the old belief that a crooked wing meant a lesser worth. I spent those months teaching him things no human had ever taught a young dragon before, mostly because nobody had ever had the chance to try. I taught him patience when his frustration at his own limits threatened to overwhelm him. I taught him that speed was not the only way to measure strength, and that a wing which worked differently was not the same as a wing that did not work at all. In return, Ash taught me more about the Vraxel than any briefing document ever could. He showed me how they read the wind before a storm arrived. He showed me the quiet respect they held for the land itself, something my own people had been too quick to overlook. There were hard days too. A season into his recovery, Ash tried to fly on his own for the first time, pushing off from a low ridge without warning, and the sight of him tumbling out of control sent my heart into my throat. I ran toward the spot where he crashed into a field of soft brush, certain I would find him badly hurt. Instead, I found him lying on his back, wings splayed, making a sound that I eventually realized was laughter. He had not been trying to prove anything to the clan. He had simply wanted to feel the wind for the first time, and even a clumsy, painful fall had been worth it to him. That attitude, more than anything, was what slowly began to change the minds of the older Vraxel around us. They watched a cub they once would have written off entirely grow into something fierce and curious and determined, refusing to let one crushed wing decide the rest of his story. The elder who had first spoken to me on that open field returned many times over the following years, each visit a little less formal, a little warmer than the last. On one visit, it told me that the clan had begun quietly reconsidering the old law of the verdict of the sky, not abandoning it outright, but questioning whether a body's first failure should always be treated as its final answer. I did not set out to change an entire culture. I want to be honest about that. Standing in that ravine with my hands raw and my heart pounding, I was not thinking about treaties or ancient law or the future of 2 species learning to trust each other. I was thinking about a small, terrified creature who had no one else coming for him. Everything that grew from that moment, the shared knowledge, the protection over our outpost, the slow thaw between humans and Vraxel across the whole moon, came from a decision made in less time than it takes to catch a breath. Years passed the way they always do. Quietly at first and then all at once. Ash grew into his full size, and the crooked scar along his wing joint became less a mark of weakness and more a mark of history, something the younger cubs in the clan would ask him about with open curiosity instead of pity. He carried himself with a confidence that had nothing to do with how straight his wing sat and everything to do with how hard he had worked to use it at all. I still remember the day he flew properly for the first time, truly flew, without wobbling, without doubt in the rhythm of his wing beats. I stood on the same ridge where I had once dragged him free of broken stone, watching him carve a wide, steady arc across a sky that had once tried to claim his life simply for being imperfect. The wind off his wings nearly knocked me flat when he circled back and landed in front of me, folding his enormous frame down until his eye met mine, the same way his elder had done on the day everything changed. "Thank you," he said, his voice deeper now, carrying the weight of the creature he had become, for not believing in verdicts. I did not have a clever answer for that. I placed my hand against the scar tracing his wing joint and told him the plain truth. I had not saved him because I believed in grand ideas about fate or worth or destiny. I had saved him because walking away and leaving him there was never something I was capable of doing, not that day, not any day. He seemed to accept that answer, and honestly, it was the only one I had ever needed to give. Corvus is a different place now than it was on the day I first crossed into Vraxel territory without permission. Human researchers and Vraxel elders sit together in the same meeting halls, exchanging knowledge that neither side would have shared willingly a few years earlier. Cubs born with wings that do not match the old ideal are no longer left to the mercy of the sky. Instead, they are given a chance. The same chance one exhausted human once gave a trembling creature trapped beneath broken stone. I never expected any of it. I only expected to finish a routine supply run and go home. Instead, I found a frightened cub in a collapsing ravine, and in trying to save one small life, I ended up changing the fate of two entire species who had spent generations refusing to understand each other. Sometimes the biggest changes in the world do not begin with grand plans or careful strategy. Sometimes they begin with one person refusing to walk away from someone who needs help, even when every rule, every warning, and every instinct for self-preservation says to keep moving. I walked toward that cry in the ravine because I could not do anything else. Everything that followed, the trust, the knowledge, the protection, the friendship that has carried me through every year since, grew from that single, simple choice. I would make it again in an instant, without hesitation, exactly the same way I made it the first time.